Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Today I wanted to share with you a technique that I use when I want to have a watercolor effect. I by no means am able to watercolor, and that's probably one of my most difficult types of techniques. But I'm going to show you how I actually do my watercoloring using some distress inks as well as my spritz bottle. So let's go ahead and get started here. Now, the stamps that I'm going to use are from the Tim Holtz collection, and I'm going to be focusing on the actual stamps that look like your holly berry bushes, but really any type of background bush would work for this. And what I'm doing essentially is I'm just taking either distress oxide or distress ink, and I am stamping it, and then I'm spritzing it with water. Now, I wanted to show you the difference between a spritzed image and a non-spritzed image. So the one on the right, I didn't spritz with the water, and then the one on the left, I did. And you can see it is just a little bit more muffled. It looks like a more watercolor design. But you really want to be careful when you are using this technique not to use too much water. Because if you do use too much water, then your image is going to get too blurry, and we certainly don't want that. Now, I wanted to take it a step further. You could have easily stopped here and gone along with your design by adding your sentiment, but I wanted to show you how I like to add multiple colors to my images. Now, I'm using green and blue, and this second blue color is actually a little bit darker than I anticipated, so you want to be careful when choosing your colors. But after I had completed the card, I actually was pretty happy with it. Typically, you're going to see some of your holly bushes focusing on the green colors, but this really gave it a nice, cool look using the blue, and I was happy with the overall turnout of the card. So don't be afraid to experiment with your colors. Now, the technique is really easy. The only thing you want to really make sure of is when you stamp your first layer, you want to go ahead and dry it, because if you don't dry it, having the wetness of the spritz will actually smear your images, and you don't want that. So stamp your first layer, dry it, and then stamp your second layer. And they don't have to be perfect layers because you want to have some of the overlay color. So just, you can eyeball it, and that's really what I did. I wouldn't recommend using your stamping platform because you don't necessarily want the exact impression to be over it. You want it to be slightly to the left or slightly to the right. So once I was happy with my images, I went ahead and I took some of my Frayed burlap and I kind of rubbed it onto my craft mat, and then I spritzed it. And then I took my paintbrush and I splattered it. I wanted to have a little bit of a grunge background without having to actually add my distress ink to it. And then I took some of that remainder color and I used my paintbrush just to add some color to the edges. Now, to bring out the blue in this stamp image, I did decide to use some blue cardstock to outline my white cardstock, and I really loved how it popped. Typically, you're not going to see these blues in your Christmas cards, but I really think it worked. Don't be afraid, again, to use non-traditional colors when you are creating some of your cards, because sometimes when you think something won't work, like I thought on this particular one, it really turned out nice. Now, one of the stamp sets that I got this year was the stamp set from Tim Holtz called Christmastime. And as I indicated in some of my earlier videos, the reason I kind of went towards this stamp set is I really loved the big Christmas sentiments. Many of us have lots of Christmas sentiments that we use for the inside of our card, but we don't always have bigger sentiments that work as a focal point on the outside. And that's what I really liked about this set. And I thought some of these holly berry bushes would be perfect as a background for these big sentiments. Now, while I use the distress ink and the distress oxides for my holly berry bushes, I used black archival ink for my sentiment. And this is because I really wanted to make sure it was a crisp image and it stood out. Whenever you are stamping over stamped images, you want to make sure that your focal point is nice and crisp and clear. And the black archival ink worked really well for this. Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and stamp up another card using more of some green tones. I know the first card was very blue, and while I loved it, I wanted to go ahead and show you how you can combine other colors as well. Now, I'm using blues and greens, and I would recommend that when you are actually combining your colors, you want to work with colors that are in the same family. You don't want to turn up some muddy results, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're working. So for the second card, I am going to go ahead and come in with a darker green, and I want to say it's Lucky Clover. I believe that's the color that I'm using. And of course, it's the same technique. You're going to want to go ahead and add your distress ink or your distress oxide, and you're going to want to spritz it and then stamp it. Now, for this particular stamp, the holly berries are a little bit bigger, and you can see that they're not as distinct. So keep that in mind when you are stamping. If you want a more distinct image, be light-handed on the water because it will run together, of course. And as I did on the first card, you're going to want to go ahead and dry your stamped images in between each layer. So once you've dried it, you're going to want to go ahead and move on to your next color. Now make sure that you do clean your stamp because you don't want to have the mixture of the ink, especially because it will contaminate your other ink pads, but certainly because you want to have some crisp colors. So the second color that I decided to come in with was broken china, I believe. But you could easily use not only broken china, but tumbled glass as well. Again, experiment with these colors, see what works for you. And then I also had another color that I just wanted to see how it worked. And I'm going to come in on the bottom portion of my card with peeled paint. You're going to see now there were a few greens in the Tim Holtz Distress collection, and while I'm using Lucky Clover on this particular card, I did want to try another color and another green that's a little bit lighter and a little bit softer, and this is peeled paint. So there's no right or wrong to this. You can easily mix and match your colors on your card. You may want to just stick to the one color for the bottom layer, but I did want to show you the different look using the peeled paint. So I went ahead again, I just kind of took my ink, stamped it on my card after I had spritzed it. And as you can see, there is a different result here. So you could easily use several combinations. Just give them a try, see what you like best. All right, so once I was finished with my initial stamping, I did dry it. I didn't show you that on the actual video, but I did dry it, of course, and then I came in with my second layer. So once I had the frame on my card, I did want to go ahead and add some of those splatters that I did earlier, and then I wanted to add some of the Distress Oxide to the actual white cardstock just to make it look a little bit more grungy. So it's the same process. I just took my my Frayed Burlap and I rubbed it on my mat, and then I spritzed it with water. Now, depending on how big you want your splatters is probably how much water you want to use. I went ahead and I just used some small splatters because I didn't want it to overtake the card, knowing that I was going to add a sentiment. And then once I was happy with my splatter results, I went ahead and I dried it. And then I came in with my, my distress tool to add a little bit more color to the edges. Okay, so now that I have my stamping complete, it was time to go ahead and add a couple of embellishments, add my sentiments, and adhere it to my card. So as you recall on the blue card, I did have more of a white bottom because I didn't add that last stamp to frame the sentiment. So I decided to pull out some of my washi tape. Now this washi tape is from the Tim Holtz collection. I know we don't see a lot of glitters from his collections, but he did have some blue and green glitter in some of his washi tape sets, and they worked perfect for these. The blue glitter washi tape matched my blue card perfectly, and then after I had stamped my sentiment on this green one, I did come in and add the green glitter washi tape for this one, and the results were great. I really was happy with these cards. Now, if you recall, I had asked for some recommendations on some of the cards that I would be creating for this series, and one of the requests was to make cards with non-traditional Christmas colors, and I think that blue probably does qualify for that. The request did come from Lee Wallace, and Lee, I will paste your comment at the end of my video, so go ahead and get a hold of me through my Etsy shop, and I'll get out that blue Christmas card to you. Backgrounds are a great way to use some of those non-traditional Christmas colors, especially if you're going to be stamping a Christmas sentiment, because the focus point or the focal point is going to be your sentiment, of course, not necessarily the background. So get creative, use some of those non-traditional colors, especially with a technique like this. So once I had both of the cards completely mounted on the cardstock, and I had my washi tape added, it was time to add some of my my Nuvo drops to my holly berries. Now, while the Nuvo drops worked for the holly berries on the blue card because the berries were a little bit smaller, they wouldn't quite work for the green card. So I did come up with a way to give those some color, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute here. Now, make sure you do stick around to the end of the video because I am going to be announcing some of the winners for my last digital passport card, which was the Santa card. And I am going to also give away one of my holiday Christmas stamp sets. So be sure to hang around for that. I've already started working on my January passport kit. And my goal is to release at least 1 to 2 passport kits a month. So if you are enjoying my passport kits, be on the lookout for those every month. Probably the beginning of the month and the middle of the month is when I'll do the releases. If you do like those passport kits and you have some ideas for some themes, leave those in the comments so that way I can kind of start getting some ideas of type of themes that you want for my cards. So I hope that you enjoyed my video on showing you how to create a watercolor card without having the necessary skills of a watercolorer. So as always, I will leave a list of all the products that I've used to create these cards along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. And as always, I really do appreciate your comments on my cards. So don't forget to leave me a comment. And if you are one of those people that like to get those passport kits, if you have some ideas of some of the themes that you want to see in the future, give me some ideas in my comments as well. So with this video, I am coming almost to the end of my Christmas series. And I plan on doing one more video after this. I haven't taped it yet, but I hope to get it done in the next couple of days, and I've already got the idea of what I'm going to be sharing with you. And start putting on your thinking caps, because on my next video, I am going to be asking you for some more ideas for some videos in 2019. All right, everybody, thanks for stopping by, and don't forget to wait to the end of the video to see if you were one of the winners of my Santa passport card, as well as one of my Christmas stamp sets. All right, we'll see you again next time.